government of men and women, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor us, your servants, whom you have called to the performance of important trust in these islands. Father, let your blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. And this we beg in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Please be seated. Item number 2, confirmation of minutes of the 10th of November, 2025. And I call on Vice President John White. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I think that's 10th of December. I move that the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, 10th of December, 2025 be taken as read.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the minutes of Wednesday, 10th December, 2025 be confirmed.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The minutes are confirmed. Thank you, Vice President John White. Item number 3, messages, Mrs. Beal.
I actually do have one message, Madam President, and it is from the Honorable House of Assembly, and it reads, to the Honorable the President and members of the Senate, the members of the Honorable House of Assembly desire to extend to the President and members of the Senate our greetings and best wishes for Christmas and the New Year.
Thank you, Mrs. Beal, for reading that message. Item number 4, reports of committees. There are none. Item number 5, announcements. Senators, we have a few announcements, and the first is in the name of...
Thank you, Madam President. If you will indulge, I actually have 4.
Yes.
And I will make those announcements all at once as opposed to individually. Madam,
proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I hereby present for the information of the Senate, the 2025 Bermuda Public Accountability Board Annual Report, the Bermuda Public Accountability Board Audited Financial Statements for the year ended March 31st, 2025, the 2024 Bermuda Public Accountability Board Annual Report, and the Bermuda Public Accountability Board Audited Financial Statements for the year ended March 31st, 2024. Senators may access copies on their tablets and or the Parliament website. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister Crystal Caesar, spokesperson for Finance. And the other... I believe the other announcements are in the name of Senator Bell, Senator Lauren Bell, the Junior Minister for Economy and Labor. Senator Bell, you have the floor.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam President, Senate colleagues, and listening audience. I hereby present for the information of the Senate the Limited Liability Company Forms Amendment Regulations 2025 as made by the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 255 of the Limited Liability Company Act 2016.
Thank you, and I believe you have...
Yes, Madam President, I have 3 more announcements.
Please do.
I hereby present for the information of Senate the Companies Forms Amendment Rules 2025 as made by the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 288 of the Companies Act 1981. Madam President, in addition, I hereby present for the information of Senate the Benefits Entities Act 2025 Commencement Day Notice 2025 as made by the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 9 of the Benefits Entities Act 2025. And finally, Madam President, I hereby present for the information of Senate the annual report for the Registrar General for the year ended 31st of December 2024 in accordance with Section 19 of the Registration, Births, and Deaths Act 1949. Senators may access copies of these announcements on their tablets and or the Parliament website.
Thank you, Senator Bell, the Junior Minister of Economy and Labor. And I think the final announcement is in the name of Senator Misha Fabler. Senator Fabler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I hereby present for the information of Senate the Water Resources Pollution Discharge Reporting Abatement and Remediation Regulations 2025, as made by the Minister responsible for the environment in exercise of the power conferred in Section 39, as read with Part 8 of the Water Resources Act 1975. Senators may access copies on their tablets and or the Parliament website. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Misha Fabler. Item number 6, notices of motion, there are none. Item number 7, petitions, there are none. Item number 8, statements, there are none. Item number 9, introduction of bills, there are none. Item number 10, the first reading of public bills. Senator, the following public bills have been received from the Honorable House of Assembly and are now read for the first time. Their titles are respectively Land Valuation and Tax Amendment Act 2025, the Bermuda Monetary Authority Amendment Act 2025, the Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act 2025, and the Insurance Amendment Number 2 Act 2025. And Senators, these public bills will be taken up on our orders of the day later in the meeting. Item number 11, the first reading of private bills, there are none. Item number 12, question period, there are none. And that brings us to the orders of the day. And before we resume with that, I would just like to welcome and announce Mr. George Outerbridge, as well as Mr. Anthony King, who are from the Register of Companies. Welcome to you both. So the first order of the day is the second reading of the Land Evaluation and Tax Amendment Act 2025, and that's in the name of Senator the Honorable Crystal C. Caesar, Minister of Education and Spokesperson on Finance. I believe, I'm sorry. I believe that will be taken under by Senator Misha Fabler. Misha Fabler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Sorry, just to, in the spirit of community and the holiday season and assisting those in need, we have decided to ease up the minister. She has several bills today, and to save her voice for the holiday season, we will be sharing the load, as it were. And so in that regard, Madam President, I'd like to move that the provisions of Standing Order 25 be granted so that the Senate may now proceed with the second reading of the bills entitled the Land Valuation and Tax Amendment Act 2025, the Bermuda Monetary Authority Amendment Act 2025, the Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act 2025, and Insurance Amendment Act 2025.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. You may continue.
Thank you, Madam President. And so I'm honored to present to this honorable House. Oh, sorry, apologies. I'm getting ahead of myself here, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled the Land Valuation and Tax Amendment Act 2025 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. And as I said, I'm honored to present this Land Valuation and Tax Amendment Act 2025 for its second reading. This bill represents a significant and long overdue modernization of the way the information is collected during a revaluation, which underpins the land valuation framework that has guided Bermuda's land tax system for nearly 6 decades. The amendments proposed today ensure that our data collection processes reflect the realities of the 21st century, support efficient government operations, and provide taxpayers with accessible and equitable service. Madam President, the valuation list is the foundation upon which our land taxation system rests. It establishes the annual rental values for every property across the island. These ARVs form the basis on which land tax is assessed. In the upcoming fiscal year 2025-26, land tax revenue for the 2015 valuation list is projected at $87 million, representing roughly 6.1% of total government revenue. Such a critical revenue source must be underpinned by a legislative framework that is modern, efficient, and able to meet the needs of a digital society. The last full valuation list, Madam President, was completed in 2015. The 2020 valuation was postponed due to pandemic uncertainties, and earlier this year, this House agreed to a further postponement of the 2025 quinquennial or 5-year yearly revaluation to enable essential legislative reform. As a result, the next draft valuation list is now scheduled for deposit on the 31st of December, 2026. This gives the government the opportunity and indeed the responsibility to update outdated statutes that no longer support an efficient valuation process. Madam President, the Land Valuation Department performs a substantial and highly technical task. The quinquennial revaluation requires the department to gather and analyze data from approximately 37,000 valuation units. Historically, this process has relied almost entirely on paper. Printed revaluation return forms mailed to taxpayers, manual completion by property owners, and data manually entered into the department's systems by staff or temporary hires. This paper-based approach has several disadvantages. First, time-consuming data entry reduces the time available for the department to analyze valuation trends. Second, high administrative costs, including printing, mailing, temporary staffing, and overtime, averaging approximately $100,000 per revaluation cycle. Third, inefficiencies and transcription errors, which reduce the accuracy of the valuation model. And fourth, barriers for taxpayers who must physically receive, complete, and return paper forms. Madam President, these methods are relics of 1967. They do not reflect the tools available today, nor the expectations of a modern and digitally engaged population. The amendments in this bill therefore enable the department to adopt digital forms, electronic notices, and streamlined methods of data submission that will save time, reduce costs, and significantly improve the quality of the submitted valuation data. Digital submission is not only a convenience, it is a fundamental step in ensuring that Bermuda's valuation system remains fair, transparent, and capable of supporting sustainable public finance. Madam President, the government has made a firm commitment to modernize public services through digital transformation. The shift to electronic notices and online revaluation return forms directly support this national agenda. Under the amended legislation, taxpayers will be able to complete their revaluation return forms online at any time from anywhere in the world using any device. The system will be secure, cloud-based, and supported by encryption and privacy safeguards. This represents an improved, more user-friendly approach to interacting with government. However, Madam President, modernization must never come at the expense of accessibility. Many of our seniors, vulnerable residents, and individuals without digital access must still be able to fully participate in the revaluation process. This government is absolutely committed to ensuring that no one is left behind. To that end, departmental officers will be trained to assist individuals in person, by phone, and by email. The department will partner with Age Concerned Bermuda to help seniors understand and complete the digital forms. Individuals who cannot complete the forms themselves may be assisted by a family member, friend, or department officer. This approach balances modernization with compassion. It reflects our belief that digital government must remain an inclusive government. To ensure broad awareness during the transition, a one-time island-wide mailing addressed to the occupier will accompany public notices in the official gazette and daily newspapers. A comprehensive communication strategy, including TV, radio, and social media, will ensure that every resident understands their role, responsibilities, and options. Madam President, several provisions within the existing act no longer serve the needs of a modern society. One, it is an outdated notice requirements. The act requires that physical notices and paper revaluation return forms be mailed to each taxpayer. This is no longer practical or necessary. The amendments allow for service of notices through publication in the official gazette and also daily local newspapers for 2 consecutive weeks, directing taxpayers to an online portal. This change streamlines the administrative process while preserving transparency and public awareness. 2. Restrictions on submitting forms. The current act only allows for hand delivery or registered post to serve documents on the director. This is unnecessarily restrictive. The amendments now permit electronic submission consistent with modern communication practices and government's sustainability goals. 3. Hard copy valuation lists in every post office. Since 1999, the valuation list has been available online and updated nightly, requiring a printed copy of the draft valuation list in every post office for public inspection, despite the list being dynamic and frequently updated, is inefficient and outdated. These copies often become damaged or removed shortly after placement. Under the amendments, the requirement to deposit printed copies at all post offices will be removed. A single printed copy will remain available for inspection at the department's office. The online list will remain accessible to all and updated regularly. Madam President, these reforms reduce unnecessary administrative burdens, improve efficiency, and ultimately enhance the accuracy and fairness of the evaluation process. They also reduce environmental waste, significantly lower revaluation costs, and position government for long-term digital readiness. Madam President, in conclusion, the Land Valuation and Tax Amendment Act 2025 is more than a technical adjustment to a long-standing statute. It is a forward-looking reform that acknowledges how Bermuda has changed and must continue to change to remain competitive, responsive, and fiscally responsible. By embracing digital processes, improving public accessibility, reducing inefficiencies, and removing outdated statutory requirements, we strengthen the very foundation of our land taxation system. These reforms will support a more accurate, timely, and cost-effective revaluation in 2026 and in every cycle thereafter. A strong valuation system ensures fairness for property owners, protects the integrity of government revenue, and reinforces the principle that every taxpayer contributes based on a transparent and equitable assessment. Madam President, this bill reflects the government's commitment to modernize public administration, improve service delivery for all residents, reduce operating costs and administrative burdens, and build a tax system that is fair, accurate, and sustainable. With these remarks, I respectfully move. No, I don't do that yet. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Misha Fowler. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Yes. Senator Victoria Cunningham, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the junior minister, who I guess has Cabinet Office and Digital Innovation. So thank you for his presentation. The opposition is supportive of this bill, and it's great to see digital transformation actually, being elaborated on and how it's benefiting the public and obviously our taxpayers. I think one of my only question is about public outreach and our taxpayers understanding fully the new processes. So it's gone from obviously paper-based to digital. And so, obviously we have an aging population, 25% over the age of 65 by possibly the end of this year or next year. So how are we ensuring that everyone is aware of these changes? Thank you, Madam President.
Yes. Senator John White, Vice President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I think this Amendment Act is long overdue. I'm fully supportive of it. It obviously improves efficiency and brings this manual process into the 21st century for Bermuda. So I'm fully supportive of it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Vice President John White. Would any other senator? Yes, Senator Dion Smith, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to verify or understand if the hosting of the application was in Bermuda or some other jurisdiction. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Fowler, you have a number of questions. You can respond when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam President. And so to the first question from Senator Cunningham around how we will make people aware, I will refer back to the statement around the official Gazette as well as daily newspapers. The daily newspaper is going to have notices printed for 2 weeks. There will also be a combined communication strategy from both the department as well as the Department of Communications and Information. So I imagine that would involve both traditional and social media. And also, as mentioned in the statement, the mass mailing of the flyer to the occupier. And so for all of you at home, I encourage you to check that mailbox. I know here in Bermuda, we are lucky in comparison to some of our neighbors who find the mailbox inundated with advertisements. I think relatively few of those seem to arrive at my home, at least. And in that regard, it should be relatively easy to identify the mailer. Also, my understanding, the land tax notice will include information that, the valuation is happening this year. So I think people generally receive those as well twice a year. And then to Senator Smith's question around hosting, I had a similar inquiry. And so the hosting is done in an online partnership with a platform called GovPilot. So it's hosted in the cloud in not Bermuda. And let me just see if I have in my response from the technical officers where it is specifically. Yes, it is specifically hosted in New Jersey. And not to anticipate supplementary questions, but I would also like to highlight that the vendor is SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, as I know that is something that many of us in the IT space would be concerned about in regards to hosting personal information, or at least private information. And I believe that was all and I think that was all the questions from the senators. Madam President, I'll leave the space now for if either had supplementary.
Senators, there are more questions regarding this bill? No. Senator Fubler, seems you have full support.
Thank you, Madam President. And in that case, I move that standing Rule 26 be suspended in respect of. Oh, sorry, apologies. Madam President, I move that this bill be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I now move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I therefore move that the bill entitled the Land Valuation and Tax Amendment Act 2025 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill do not pass.
It has been moved that the bill do not pass. Is there any objection to the passage of the bill? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator Misha Fubler, and thank you all senators who participated.
Thank you, Madam President.
Moving on then with our next agenda on the orders of the day, and that is the second reading of the Bermuda Monetary Authority Amendment Act 2025, and that's in the name of Senator the Honorable Crystal Caesar, Minister of Education and spokesperson for Finance.
Thank you,
Senator,
Madam.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Bermuda Monetary Authority Amendment Act 2025 be now read for a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I am pleased to present to the Senate the Bermuda Monetary Authority Amendment Act 2025, or the bill. The bill amends the Bermuda Monetary Authority Act 1969, or the BMA Act, to one, facilitate information sharing between the Bermuda Monetary Authority or the authority and the Bermuda Deposit Insurance Corporation, or the BDIC. Two, to revise the fees payable under the fifth schedule to ensure cost alignment with the supervision of Bermuda's evolving insurance market. And three, make consequential amendments to the Deposit Insurance Act 2011 to operationalize the information sharing framework and reinforce coordinated crisis management between the authority and the BDIC. Madam President, these amendments will strengthen the Bermuda's financial stability framework and enhance the authority's supervisory capacity, particularly in relation to innovative insurance classes and internationally active insurance groups. Madam President, Section 31, the secrecy of the Bermuda Monetary Authority Act, establishes the authority's powers to share information with other public authorities for regulatory and supervisory powers. However, until now, this section did not expressly include the BDIC, the statutory body responsible for protecting depositors and maintaining confidence in Bermuda's banking system. The BDIC was established under the Deposit Insurance Act 2011 in response to lessons learned from the 2008 global financial crisis. It provides protection of up to $25,000 per eligible depositor and plays a key role in supporting banking stability. Effective coordination between the authority and the BDIC is essential for managing financial crises, protecting depositors, and maintaining public confidence in the financial system. Currently, while the authority has seats on the BDIC Board of Directors, the authority's ability to share relevant supervisory data directly with the BDIC is limited. This bill therefore establishes an explicit legal gateway for information exchange to ensure timely and effective coordination during a financial crisis. The bill also updates the authority's fee structure in the fifth schedule of the BMA Act for certain innovative insurers and insurance marketplace providers to better reflect the actual costs of regulation, which have not been revised since 2018. These changes are informed by stakeholder feedback received through public consultation and align Bermuda supervisory fees with international norms. Key provisions of the bill. Clause 2, Amendment to Section 31 of the BMA Act. Madam President, Clause 2 of the bill amends Section 31, 1AA of the BMA Act to expressly authorize the authority to share information with the BDIC. Madam President, should a local banking crisis ever arise, an effective response will require seamless communication and information sharing between the authority and the BDIC. The current legislative framework does not formally establish an information sharing gateway between those two key entities. This amendment will serve to mitigate the risks of delays in decision-making and alignment of activities in the midst of a crisis, thereby enhancing the resilience of Bermuda's financial system. Madam President, separately but relatedly, it is proposed that a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, be developed and mutually endorsed by the authority and the BDIC. This MOU will establish the agreed parameters for information sharing, encompassing various aspects, such as the circumstances prompting information sharing with the BDIC and the purview and intent of the shared information. Madam President, this amendment supports improved depositor protection, alignment of activities, and coordinated crisis management. It provides the statutory clarity needed for the authority and the BDIC to exchange supervisory information while preserving confidentiality requirements. Clause 3, which is the amendment to Part C of the Fifth Schedule 2026 fees of the BMA Act. Madam President, this clause of the bill revises the Fifth Schedule of the BMA Act to update fees applicable to the various insurance entities regulated under the Insurance Act 1978, particularly innovative insurance business classes, Class IGB, Insurance Group or General Business, and Class ILT, Insurance Group Long-Term Business, which are permitted to carry on business in an innovative and experimental manner, and Class IIGB, Innovative Insurance Group General Business, and Class IILT, Innovative Insurance Group Long-Term Business, which are permitted to carry on their business in an innovative manner as insurance marketplace providers. Specifically, the amendments include increasing registration fees and annual fees for innovative insurers and marketplace providers to better reflect the cost of oversight within these particular insurance sectors, and introducing an annual fee for internationally active insurance groups, IAIGs, carrying on insurance business calculated at $545,900 plus 0.002% of gross written premium, subject to a cap of $1,249,000. Madam President, regarding the proposed IAIG fee introduction, the authority corresponded directly with the Insurance of Bermuda Insurers and Reinsurers, or ABIR, as well as the only impacted insurer, to inform them of these changes even prior to consultation. Madam President, these adjustments provide the authority with adequate resources to continue its rigorous oversight of Bermuda's expanding and increasingly complex insurance sector. Madam President, the authority did not receive any feedback in relation to these proposals during the consultation period. Clause 4, which is the consequential amendments to the Deposit Insurance Act 2011. Madam President, Clause 4 amends the Deposit Insurance Act 2011 to align the BDIC's statutory functions with those of the authority and to enable reciprocal information sharing. Specifically, the amendments update Section 5 to clarify that the BDIC's functions include improving depositor protection, ensuring alignment of activities, and coordinating crisis management with the authority. Address Section 41 to permit the BDIC to exchange statutory information with the authority, and insert new confidentiality safeguards to protect information shared between the two entities. These provisions collectively establish a clear and controlled legal framework for information exchange, consistent with global practices for financial stability oversight. Madam President, the proposals contained in this bill were subject to public consultation from the 24th of July to the 5th of September 2025. The consultation process engaged industry stakeholders, including ABARE, the Bermuda Bankers Association, and the BDIC Board. The consultation paper was published on the authority's website on the 5th of September in a document titled Consultation Paper, an Illustrative Draft, Bermuda Monetary Authority Act 1969, Proposed Amendments to General Powers and Fee-Related Changes. Madam President, the BDIC Board endorsed the proposed amendments to the Deposit Insurance Act 2011. Madam President, the rationale and policy impacts of these amendments are necessary to ensure a coordinated national response in the event of a banking or systemic crisis, strengthen depositor protection and confidence in Bermuda's financial system, maintain the authority's financial sustainability and supervisory capability, and align Bermuda's legislative framework with evolving international standards on cross-sectoral regulatory cooperation and cost recovery. Madam President, by modernizing both the BMA Act and the Deposit Insurance Act, Bermuda will further entrench its reputation as a well-regulated and resilient financial center. Madam President, the provisions of this bill will take effect on the 1st of January 2026, providing adequate time for industry transition while ensuring that new and amended fees are in place for the start of the 2026 calendar year. Madam President, the bill reflects this government's continued commitment to ensuring a sound, stable, and well-supervised financial system. By strengthening cooperation between the authority and the BDIC and ensuring the authority has adequate resources to execute its mandate, we continue to uphold Bermuda's reputation for world-class financial regulation. I wish to thank the Bermuda Monetary Authority, the Attorney General's Chambers, the Bermuda Deposit Insurance Corporation, technical officers in the Ministry of Finance, and all stakeholders for their collaboration in developing this important legislation. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Mrs. Caesar, the spokesperson for finance in the Senate. And before I open the floor to questions on this bill, I would just like to acknowledge and welcome the team of persons from the Monetary Authority who are here to assist the minister this morning. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Cunningham, you have the floor. Opposition leader in the Senate, I will add.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for that presentation on the Bermuda Monetary Amendment Act. Again, the opposition is in agreement with this bill, obviously seeing general increases in the fees and the information sharing between the BMA and the BDIC. One question is about the information being shared and how it will be ensured that any security and privacy is maintained, and what safeguards are going to be put in place for that. And also whether I think you said the January 1st timeline for implementation is actually realistic, given the entities needing to comply with this. And I think that is everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cunningham. Senator Tawana Tannock, you've indicated you have questions. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, thank you. My question is relating first in part to Section 3, which amends the fifth schedule. Can we get an explanation? So there is some variance, from $1,000 to $1,500 to $3,000 in some instances of increases. Can we get an explanation of how those increases that vary greatly were apportioned and why it was determined that, for instance, like I said, in some instances, we are going up $5,000, in others $1,000, in others $1,500. So can we get a breakdown? I know we spoke about the increase in cost in monitoring and regulation, but of course, costs are increasing for businesses as well. And so the last thing that businesses want are arbitrary increases. So can we get an explanation of how figures were allotted to specific increases, given that there is such variance?
Senator John White, Vice President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to comment on the process. I just want to thank the minister for the extensive consultative process that has taken place with all the affected lobby groups and stakeholders. So I think this is the type of consultation that's so important for important amendments like this. So I just want to I'm in full support of the amendments, and just want to thank the minister for the process that has taken place to lead to this. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Vice President John White. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none, then it's over to you, Minister.
Thank you, Madam President. I will just confer with technical officers to gain those answers and we respond accordingly.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
So with regard to the first question about information sharing and and level of confidentiality, there are confidentiality provisions within the bill which will determine that how and why information needs to be shared and how it will be shared. So that it is entrenched in the specific bill. The second question with regard to the January 1st timeline and whether that's realistic in terms of the implementation, since there has been consultation since I believe July of this year, entities are aware that these changes are coming, and so they've had sufficient time and obviously have agreed also during consultation to this being a time frame in order for them to be able to meet that time frame. And the last question with regard to the variances in the different increases for different entities, the fees are linked to the time and effort taken to appropriately oversee the different classes of entity. And since they have not changed for some time, there is a level of expertise baked into how those fees have been determined. So I hope that those three questions have been sufficiently answered, Madam President.
Senators, I observe no objection or hand raised. So, Minister, I think you've answered the questions that were posed. You can.
Thank you,
continue to
Madam
proceed.
President. Madam President, with that, I move that the Bermuda Monetary Authority Amendment Act 2025 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Rule 20, Rule 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled the Bermuda Monetary Authority Amendment Act 2025 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled Bermuda Monetary Authority Amendment Act 2025 do now pass. Is there an objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Senators. We're now moving on to the third item on our agenda, and that is the second reading of the Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act 2025, and that will be taken under by the Attorney General, Ms. Kim Wilkerson. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning to the members of the listening public. Madam President, I move that the provisions of Standing Order 25 be suspended in relation to the bill entitled Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act 2025.
Thank you. I think Misha,
Oh, Misha did it
he
on my
did that,
behalf.
so
So I now
that's good.
move,
He's helped you
Madam
out
President,
this morning.
the bill entitled Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act 2025 be read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, colleague Misha
Mhm.
Fubler. Madam President, before the Senate is the Beneficial Ownership Amendment Bill 2025. This bill follows the recently enacted Beneficial Ownership Act 2025, which, for clarity, I will refer to as the bill, and provides for the minister to make amendments to the Beneficial Ownership Act 2025, to which I will refer to as the Principal Act. Madam President, the Senate will recall that in September 2025, the Principal Act was passed in the legislature. Madam President, as a reminder to the Senate, the Principal Act, which is now in force, established a legislative framework for a central register of beneficial ownership information of companies by enhancing Bermuda's previous beneficial ownership regime in accordance with the revised Financial Action Task Force, FATF, Recommendation 24, and consolidating that regime under the framework of a single act to ensure that accurate and up-to-date beneficial ownership information is available to competent authorities in a timely manner. Madam President, since the coming into force of the Principal Act, the Registrar of Companies, as a person designated with the responsibility of administering the Beneficial Ownership Act, has engaged closely and constructively with industry stakeholders to support effective implementation. As part of that engagement, what emerged was that several industry participants had identified certain challenges in the interpretation and application of Section 16 of the Principal Act. The Senate should note that a floor amendment was proposed and passed in another place in relation to Clause 3, which repealed Section 16 of the Principal Act. Madam President, it is the obvious question, why would the government come back to repeal an entire section? And it is a good question. Upon normal registration, Madam President, the original section would have operated as intended. However, upon application, industry that discovered that certain commercial transactions could be impeded. The only effective remedy was to repeal the original Section 16 and to reconsider how the gatekeeping function in relation to shareholders may be reintroduced. Madam President, there was extensive consultation with industry stakeholders, including the proposal to preserve the gatekeeping function. This matter was included in the consultation paper that was disseminated to industry stakeholders in January 2025. However, the operational challenges only came to light on implementation of the Act. Madam President, the Registrar of Companies, as a person designated with the responsibility of administering the Beneficial Ownership Act, has engaged and continues to engage extensively and constructively with industry. Madam President, with those brief introductory remarks, I now present the bill as amended in the House entitled the Beneficial Ownership Amendment Bill 2025. Welcome comments from other honorable senators. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Attorney General Kim Wilkinson and Minister of Justice, for presenting the bill. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Tannock, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So my question really is just one of a lack of understanding or comprehension that I would just like some clarity with. So we are now saying that, what's it? Okay, Clause 2, amend Section 15. It says Section 15(1) of the Principal Act is amended by deleting the words beneficial owners and substituting the words registrable persons. However, if we then go to look at the definition of registrable persons, we see that that can also include a beneficial owner or a relevant legal entity. So I guess my question is, what is the purpose of this amendment, Clause 2, that amends Section 15? What ill are we trying to cure?
Thank you, Senator Tannock. Would any other senator care to, to ask questions on this bill? And Senator Victoria Cunningham, opposition leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And once again, this is a very good session for you guys. We are in agreement with this proposed amendment. Obviously, anything that continues to benefit the jurisdiction, especially with our FATF standards, is great. My question is that you had the consultation period, and then obviously this has been amended again. Has there been full agreement by industry on these proposed changes? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cunningham. Senator John White, Vice President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I think this legislation does align Bermuda with international standards, which is good. And obviously, overall, the legislation over the last year has improved transparency, which is important for Bermuda continuing to be a global leader as it is. I think there are certain changes that apply that perhaps wouldn't have the full support of all companies. I'm certainly aware of more than one that that is opposed to it, but I think overall it's good for the jurisdiction, and that's the priority here, is that it continues to align Bermuda with the top and most respected jurisdictions globally. So with that, Madam President, I'm fully supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President John White.
Thank you, Madam President. Hearing no other questions, I will start kind of at the back, if that's
For Tannock.
fine. With the last comment.
Oh, sorry. Senator John White, sorry.
The Senator White's, and I think that you've clarified the overall reason that we continue to refine and make changes. Certainly, Madam President and members of the Senate, when I was in London at the Joint Ministerial Conference, the issue of beneficial ownership and how the overseas territories are clarifying and meeting the international and FATF standards was one of the key issues, on the table in those discussions. So these are efforts to meet international standards, but also to continue to, Bermuda has had a transparent registry for since the 30s, I believe. So to continue to demonstrate that while we have a transparent regime, that we continue to meet international standards. And so it may be true that not every registered entity in our domicile will agree with the approach, and it is a thing of hitting the balance. So with that, I'll try to explain a little more for Senator Tannock's benefit and the benefit of the listening audience and Senate colleagues, what Clause 2 is trying to do and why it could be problematic for some, and why we felt that this was the correct balance. So Clause 2 is amending Section 15, requiring that a legal person shall enter its beneficial ownership register, enter their minimum required information in respect of every registerable person, and not just in respect of its beneficial owners. So in its current form, our Section 15.1 only requires that legal persons file the minimum required information in respect of their beneficial owners. Through inadvertence, Section 15.1 does not require that legal persons also file the minimum required information regarding the relevant legal entities that form part of its ownership structure with the registrar of companies. So it is important that legal persons be required to file information on their chain of ownership or control so that Bermuda continues to satisfy the obligations under the FATF international standards. So while this was the original intent of the Principal Act, as seen in Section 10 of the Act, which requires that legal persons enter into its beneficial ownership register the minimum required information, Section 2 of the Act defines a registrable person as a beneficial owner or relevant legal entity. The bill therefore proposes that Section 15.1 be amended by deleting the term beneficial owners and substituting with the term registrable persons. So that is the idea of the change and why it was felt to be necessary, Madam President. I'll go further. Clause 16 provides that Section 16, Clause 3 provides that Section 16 of the Principal Act is repealed. As I said earlier, it was amended on the floor of the House of Assembly on the 12th of December 2024, it's 2025. It was deleted and substituted with a new Clause 3 that repeals Section 16 of the Act in its entirety. Section 16, as it was previously written, had generated potential challenges in its interpretation and application. Section 16 created a statutory approval regime for beneficial owners of legal persons. However, during the course of further analysis and industry consultation, it became apparent that the structure and operation of Section 16 in its entirety did not completely align with the intent of the Beneficial Ownership Act and wasn't workable in practice. So the repeal of Section 16 removes the problematic approval regime and provides the opportunity to develop a more coherent framework in respect to Bermuda's gatekeeping function as it relates to shareholder approval, a function that was previously governed under the exchange control regime prior to enactment of the Principal Act. I think the question from Senator Cunningham and noting the full support across the aisle related to whether or not there was full consultation. And the answer is that yes, we consider that there was full consultation. Happy to take any supplementaries now.
Senator Lucas, sorry.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator
Tannock,
Tannock, yes.
sorry.
Thank you, AG, for that fulsome response. So I guess my question is, when we look at the definition, the change of definition from beneficial owner to registrable persons and widening the scope of the persons that can be listed. So in practice, how would this work? If an entity goes down the list of beneficial owners and designates a beneficial owner, right? Because nobody owns more than 25% or something like that. Are we then saying that anybody who they could have null has to be registered as well, in addition to the person that they are actually registering as the beneficial owner?
Thank you, Senator Tanner. That's my understanding, but I have the technical officer in the room, so I'm going to get the correct answer.
Senator Tannock.
Yeah, my apologies for having to ask a question and run, but as I indicated to Madam President, I actually have to take a meeting, so I will be listening upstairs to the response, but I didn't want it to appear rude that I was leaving after asking a question.
I think as Senator Tannock is leaving, I did want to make the point that that is the idea, to be able to have transparency through a chain of ownership.
Mhm. And just for explanation, Senator Tannock did indicate that she had an important call to make at this time, so she hasn't left the building. She's just gone to deal with that in another room. And I just also want to acknowledge the technical officers who are here to help to answer the questions.
And Madam President, if I might take the liberty at this moment, I also noticed our Chief Parliamentary Counsel in the room, Nalini Salik.
Yes,
And
thank you.
she's here, and she celebrated her birthday yesterday.
Oh,
So now all of Bermuda
wish
knows.
you many happy returns.
I wanted to
Yes, that's
commend
absolutely.
her, and obviously Gwen Johnson, who is in the room. They have done yeoman's work.
Yes.
We have been short-staffed,
Mhm.
and this team has had to bring through all of the legislation necessary for us to meet the FATF requirements
Mm.
and all of the financial legislation related to corporate income tax.
Mm.
And so I just wanted to, in this place, in this room, commend them for the fine and hard work that they have done. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you. And we will all agree with you and to thank them.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. Just so to clarify, I think I had summarized it correctly, but the change allows for the filing of all registrable persons, which are included in the beneficial ownership train and the relevant legal entities. As it was previously, only the beneficial owners were required to be filed on the register.
Mhm. Senator John White, you have the floor.
Just one further question other than just rereading the legal owners to identify beneficial owners. The question is 25% if there's a related party, if two, so give an example, if father and son collectively own 25%, but neither one individually owns more than 25%, is that considered, are they together considered to have achieved the threshold of 25%? I'm just trying to understand the practicality of it.
Just to clarify the question, you're saying if in a family structure, two individuals jointly hold the more than 25% ownership?
So neither one individually owns more than 25%, but collectively they own more than 25%. Are they considered collectively beneficial owners?
I would think collectively they would be. because that's a very that's the essence of getting to the transparency question. It is, and I think the further thing would be, how is that that joint ownership structure identified? So they may be behind it. Is it a company? And exactly, yes.
That's helpful. Thank you very much, AG.
Minister, and of AG, you have additional comments or responses?
I do not, Madam President. I thank colleagues for those questions, which certainly do help to clarify what the regime is doing and why this is an important change at having been made on the floor in another place, Madam President. So with that, I now move that the bill, Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act 2025, be read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
I now move that the bill be read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
I now move that the bill be passed.
It has now been moved that the bill entitled Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act 2025 do now pass. Is there any objection to the passage of the bill? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Madam AG.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, colleagues.
Senators, we will now move on to our fourth and final order of the day, and that's the second reading of the Insurance Amendment Number 2 Act 2025, and that's in the name of Senator the Honorable Crystal Caesar, Minister, the spokesperson for Finance in the Senate.
Thank you, Madam President.
The floor.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Insurance Amendment Act Number 2, 2025 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I am pleased to present to the Senate the bill entitled the Insurance Amendment Number 2 Act 2025, or the bill. Madam President, this bill amends the Insurance Act 1978, or the Insurance Act, which seeks to enhance the Bermuda monetary authorities, or the authority's supervisory and enforcement powers over insurance groups under the purview of the authority. Madam President, the authority was established under the Bermuda Monetary Authority Act 1969, which mandates the authority to act as advisor to the Minister of Finance on policy matters related to any financial institution. This includes matters related to the insurance industry. Madam President, the Insurance Act 1978 provides the authority with licensing, supervision, and intervention powers to regulate the insurance industry in Bermuda. As such, the authority regularly monitors developments in the insurance industry to ensure that the powers inferred to it remain relevant, appropriate, and aligned with international standards. Consequently, the authority may propose regulatory amendments as necessary, with the objective of keeping the insurance supervisory regime effective and ensuring that policyholders are protected. Madam President, having identified an opportunity to strengthen the current group supervision regime for the insurance industry, the authority has proposed amendments to the Insurance Act to facilitate a more direct approach to the supervision of insurance groups operating in or from within Bermuda, where the designated current group supervision approach through the supervision of the designated insurer is ineffective. Madam President, the enhancement of insurance group supervision is a topic of global importance. The International Association of Insurance Supervisors, or the IAIS, and its member jurisdictions, which include Bermuda, have committed to monitoring, supervising, and promoting the management of risks inherent to group structures to support stable markets. Madam President, insurance entities that are members of financial groups can be affected and influenced by the decisions of non-regulated entities, including the parent company of the group. For example, decisions related to investment allocations, intergroup transactions, and the quality of internal control systems at the group level can affect the Bermuda regulated insurance entity's ability to meet its own regulatory requirements. This can ultimately impact its ability to meet the needs of policyholders. Madam President, where there is a gap in regulatory supervision at the level of the ultimate parent company of the group, which is the company that controls the operations of the entities within the group, and where that group has inadequate risk management systems, such a group can pose a threat to other operating entities, which can impact financial stability and the reputation of relevant jurisdictions. This threat can be heightened by factors such as the size of the group and the breadth of its operations. Madam President, appreciating the risks that insurance groups can pose to financial stability, the IAIS updated its 2011 Standards on Insurance Supervision, or the Insurance Core Principles, or ICPs, to incorporate standards for supervision of significant insurance groups. These additional standards were adopted in 2019 and are called the Common Framework for the Supervision of Internationally Active Insurance Groups, or COMFRAME, which I will use going forward because that is quite a name. COMFRAME facilitates the effective supervision of large groups and have insurance operations across multiple jurisdictions. Madam President, the authority has adopted these principles and has taken steps to meet the standards set out in COMFRAME through the Insurance Amendment Act 2023, which was passed by the House on the 19th of May, 2023. These amendments provided the authority with the power to deem insurance groups internationally active and made provision for the enhanced supervision of these groups. Madam President, the principles in COMFRAME require regulators to coordinate with other relevant supervisors to identify insurance groups and determine the scope of supervision. This includes identifying all legal entities that are members of the insurance group, inclusive of holding companies. In certain circumstances, the authority's supervisory regime for insurance groups does not adequately capture holding companies. The changes proposed in this bill seeks to address this. Madam President, the proposals set out in the bill reflect the authority's ongoing commitment to an effective supervision framework that is aligned with international standards and with criteria upon which Bermuda is assessed. The proposed changes seek to address the risks posed by insurance groups that operate in Bermuda and address gaps identified by the authority through its ongoing supervisory efforts and coordination with standard setters. Madam President, the amendments primarily seek to augment the authority's supervisory powers in relation to insurance groups. The authority seeks to accomplish this by clarifying when the authority will be the group supervisor for Bermuda Insurance Group, introducing a designation process that to allow the authority to designate insurance holding companies as designated insurance holding companies for the purpose of applying group supervision in specified circumstances, enhancing supervision and enforcement powers to remove impediments to group supervision, and applying material transaction pre-notification requirements for insurance groups in cases of amalgamations, mergers, or acquisitions of other firms. Madam President, an insurance group supervisor is responsible for coordinating with other relevant supervisors of entities within the group to ensure that there is sufficient regulatory oversight of the group's operations. The authority acts as the group supervisor for insurance groups whose primary operations are controlled and managed from Bermuda. Currently, the authority supervises nearly 30 insurance groups, including 4 internationally active insurance groups. Madam President, the Insurance Act currently allows the authority to exercise discretion when determining whether it may be appropriate for the authority to be the supervisors for an insurance group. However, in support of clarity and certainty for stakeholders, the proposed amendments seek to remove this element of discretion in cases where the ultimate parent of an insurance group is located in Bermuda. Madam President, in accordance with the proposed amendments, where an insurance group is headed by a specified insurer, or where an insurance group is headed by a parent company, that is, the ultimate parent company incorporated in Bermuda, the authority shall be the group supervisor. This means that it will be mandatory for the authority to assume the role of group supervisor in this case. International standards and practices provide that the authority should be able to supervise groups headed in its jurisdiction, including having the ability to access information and exercise intervention powers. Madam President, the authority maintains discretion regarding whether it would be the group supervisor of an insurance group in cases where the ultimate parent company is not incorporated in Bermuda, and will take into consideration, among other factors, where the group is directed or managed from, the size of its Bermuda operations, and the relative importance of those operations to the group. Madam President, under the authority's current approach to group supervision, the authority designates a registered insurer through which it supervises the activities of the group. This approach has been effective in most cases and will continue to be the primary approach for group supervision. However, the proposed changes to the proposed changes seek to address circumstances where the authority finds it ineffective to enforce group supervision compliance requirements through the designated insurer. This can result, for example, in cases where impediments to the designated insurer's ability to facilitate group compliance with the authority's regulatory requirements arise, and where the group does not address such impediments. Madam President, to address these cases and to facilitate effective group supervision for Bermuda groups, for which the authority is the group supervisor, the authority has proposed amendments to the Act to allow for the designation of an insurance holding company as a designated insurance holding company through which it will apply group supervision in specific cases where the authority has determined that group supervision through the designated insurer is ineffective. This includes cases where the authority is unable to discharge any one or more of its functions outlined in the provisions of the Act related to group supervision, or where conditions for intervention set out in the Act are met and the authority deems that intervention would not be effective through the designated insurer. To facilitate the supervision of insurance holding companies, the bill introduces a definition of insurance holding company, which would be defined to mean an entity that is a body corporate, incorporated, or formed, including by way of continuation, in Bermuda that holds participations in one or more companies where at least one of the companies is an insurer. Madam President, the bill provides the authority with the power to designate insurance holding companies of groups for which the authority is the group supervisor. It is through this entity that the authority would be able to oversee the actions of the group, have access to information needed for effective supervision, and enforce compliance with the regulatory framework where such actions may have been ineffective through the designated insurer. This will also address any gaps in regulatory oversight regarding the insurance group. Madam President, in its determination of which entity will be the designated insurance holding company, the authority will assess the level of control that the entity has in the group and the level of risk to the insurance business of the group. The authority will provide notice to the relevant entities communicating the identification of the insurance holding company and explaining how such designation would impact the regulatory obligations of the group. It should be noted that the proposed amendments provide for representations to be made to the authority regarding the designation of an insurance holding company. Madam President, it should be noted that these proposals will not affect the method in which group capital is calculated. The authority currently requires group capital to be computed on a consolidated basis, and this will be the continued approach. Therefore, there is no additional compliance burden to groups in this regard. Madam President, the bill enhances the authority's powers by bringing designated insurance holding companies under scope. In relation to designated insurance holding companies, the bill provides the authority with the power to apply to the courts in Bermuda to issue injunctions restraining specified actions by a designated insurance holding company, issue penalties against a designated insurance holding company, and present a petition to the courts in Bermuda for the designated insurance holding company to be wound up. Madam President, it is important to note that these powers will be applied proportionally and carry a right of appeal in specified circumstances. For the purposes of material change reporting to the authority, Section 30JA of the Insurance Act outlines activities that are deemed material. Currently, the authority requires notification from designated insurers of material changes within 30 days of the change taking effect. However, the proposed amendment seeks to carve out a pre-notification process for material changes concerning amalgamations or mergers with or acquisitions of another firm. The authority will require notification in advance of such transactions being affected. Madam President, this means that in respect of a designated insurer or designated insurance holding company of a Bermuda insurance group, transactions involving amalgamations, mergers, and acquisitions should not be made without satisfying the requirement that a written notice of the proposed transaction be served to the authority in advance of the transaction, and the authority has issued a notice of no objection. This allows the authority to review the proposed transaction to ensure, among other things, that the transaction will not affect the authority's ability to effectively supervise the group. Madam President, the authority takes a collaborative approach in the development of its regulatory framework. In this vein, the authority has engaged with the insurance industry, international standard setters, and other stakeholders regarding the proposals presented in the bill. The authority pre-consulted with members of Bermuda International Long-Term Insurers and Reinsurers, or BILTER, and the Association of Bermuda Insurers and Reinsurers, or ABIR, which was followed by a broader consultation exercise in December 2024, where members of the public and other stakeholder groups were invited to provide feedback. Madam President, the proposals represent a new approach to insurance group supervision in Bermuda. Stakeholders asserted the need to proceed with care regarding the implementation of the proposals. There were concerns, among others, that such proposals could potentially disrupt group operations and may result in regulatory inefficiencies and group restructuring. Stakeholders were particularly concerned with the removal of the authority's discretion as it relates to its ability to withdraw as group supervisor and the extension of the authority's enforcement powers in relation to designated insurance holding companies. Additionally, stakeholders emphasized the need to apply the proposals in a proportionate and transparent manner, having regard to due process and individual firm circumstances. Madam President, the authority carefully considered the feedback and, where appropriate, adjusted the proposals. The feedback and the authority's responses were published on the authority's website on the 6th of May, 2025, in a document titled Stakeholder Letter, Consultation Paper, Proposed Enhancements to the Insurance Group Supervision Framework. One such adjustment includes the authority's decision to maintain the designated insurer in the regulatory framework and only designate an insurance holding company under specific circumstances. This reflects a change in approach from the authority's initial proposals and addresses some of the concerns raised by stakeholders. Madam President, the authority has made great efforts to address stakeholder concerns appropriately. However, the authority has taken the decision to maintain the amendments that removes its ability to withdraw as group supervisor when the mandatory conditions for group supervision by the authority have been met. As the regulator for insurance business in Bermuda, having responsibility for the effective oversight of insurance companies in or from Bermuda, it is important that there are no impediments to the authority's ability to exercise its supervisory and enforcement functions in relation to Bermuda insurance groups. Therefore, where an insurance group is headed by a specified insurer, or where an insurance group is headed by a parent company, that is the ultimate parent company, which is incorporated in Bermuda, the authority shall be the group supervisor. Madam President, in response to stakeholders' concerns about possible disruption to group operations, The authority's approach is to engage with the relevant entities and supervisors to supervisory colleges to mitigate regulatory inefficiencies and to support transition arrangements. Additionally, the bill provides transitional provisions to allow impacted entities 1 year to take such steps as may be necessary to effect the transition as it relates to group supervision. The authority will review any requests for an extension on a case-by-case basis. Madam President, where it concerns the proportionate application of proposals, including the extension of enforcement powers, the authority has emphasized that it operates in accordance with the principle of proportionality. It should be noted that the enforcement powers within the proposals, as is the case with the authority's current enforcement powers, allow for an appeals process under the Act. Further, the proposals allow for representations to the authority regarding certain group supervision decisions. Such representations will be taken into consideration before exercising supervisory actions. Madam President, the authority will ensure continued engagement with stakeholders post-implementation to ensure that intended outcomes are achieved and to mitigate any unforeseen circumstances. In closing, Madam President, I would like to thank those within the authority, the Attorney General's chambers, the Ministry of Finance, the private sector, and other stakeholders who have assisted in the development of this bill. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Minister Crystal Caesar, spokesperson for finance. And I would also like to acknowledge the team of individuals who are in the chamber, in the Senate chamber this morning to assist with any questions. Welcome to you all. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Cunningham, opposition leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the Minister for her presentation. Once again, the opposition is supportive of anything that strengthens our, our need to constantly evolve with the BMA and looking to strengthen the group supervision framework. There was a lot of big transitions of words in there. But I think, yeah, it's important. But one of my questions is around whether we have sufficient resources within the BMA to manage this. And I assume we're only talking about a small number of groups being brought into this new regime. But is there sufficient resourcing? And then more just for clarification. So if we've got, how will the BMA coordinate with foreign or overseas jurisdictions that may already be, so there's no duplication of efforts on the part of the group or the companies. And then I guess how or what circumstances would lead the BMA to designate that they were the correct authority or that it was somebody else to act as the superior supervisor? Superior supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cunningham. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Yes, Vice President John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. When I read through this, I think I felt in much the same way as the Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act that was previously discussed, in that it would be difficult, if not impossible, for all stakeholders to be fully on board. But I think on balance, this does make sense for the jurisdiction, and certainly how the legislation is applied going forward will be critical to how insurance companies impacted by this legislation feel about it. But on balance, I'm very much supportive of it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Vice President John White.
Madam President,
Minister.
I thank colleagues for their support. And in response to Senator Cunningham's question with regard to sufficient resources, you would note that this has been in discussion for some time. And so, yes, the authority does have sufficient resources to manage this process. In addition, because the authority is already a member and has relationship with supervisory colleges in terms of the management of who will end up being the superior supervisor, there will be consultation with themselves. These questions are not foreign to the authority, and so they have expertise to have conversations in order to determine the way forward in this regard.
Mhm. With that,
Any supplementaries? No.
doesn't seem to be any other
Yep.
questions, Minister,
Okay.
so you can continue to pass your bill then.
Thank you. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Insurance Amendment Number 2 Act 2025 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. With that said, Madam President, I move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Insurance Amendment Number 2 Act 2025 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act 2025 do not pass. Sorry. Oh, insurance. I'm reading the wrong one. Too much going on.
Too many, yes,
little.
too many
Yes,
names.
Too many. It's moved that the Insurance Amendment Number 2 Act 2025 do not pass. Is there an objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Senators, for your support of the Minister and sharing the workload. It's been very good. With that said, we now move on then with our agenda item 14 motions. There are none. Item number 15, congratulatory and or obituary speeches. Senator Simmons, you have the floor. Who said it back there?
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I would like to extend a heartfelt congratulations to Maya Dean on the launch of her website, Bermudian Sources. It's bermudiansources.com. Maya has created a thoughtful and much needed resource designed to help students navigate the often complex journey of pursuing higher education. As Maya described it, the website is built from experience, driven by purpose, and designed for students like you. And that intention is clearly reflected in the platform. This is no small undertaking, and the vision, care, and commitment behind the Bermudiana Sources are truly admirable. Madam President, what makes this achievement even more meaningful is that this vision was spoken into existence. During the government scholarship interviews last year, Maya shared her desire to give back to future higher education students and spoke about her plan to build a website to help guide them through the process. Today, that vision is a reality. Madam President, by providing guidance, clarity, and access to information, the Bermudiana Sources has the potential to make meaningful differences in the lives of many young people. Maya's work is a powerful reminder that our young people are innovators, problem solvers, and the change makers, identifying real needs in our community and creating meaningful solutions. So well done, Maya, on turning intention into action and lived experiences into tools for empowerment and opportunity. I look forward to seeing how this platform continues to grow and inspire others to lead with purpose. Congratulations again, Maya. And I will say, Maya, if you're listening, I have sent it to both high school principals, guidance counselors, deputy principals. I was able to go through your website. It is very helpful. So thank you, Maya, for this much needed tool. And I also sent it to the Minister of Education. Also, Madam President, I would like to take the time to thank a couple of young people. I did mention last week that We had over 400 plus angels that we had to give gifts to. The gifts were delivered on Monday to Big Brothers and Big Sisters, last week Teen Haven, and on Monday we had the Foster Parents Association annual give back to the foster children. But I want to highlight two young people in particular. Yesterday, I had a young person that wanted a electric piano. Unfortunately, the person that took that angel had to leave on a medical emergency and couldn't fulfill that wish. I had put it up on my status, and within 20 minutes, I got a message from a young lady that goes Cedar Bridge. She actually came to Chopsticks and took 2 angels, came back with the gifts, and she said, Aunt Lindsay, can you send me a bank account? I would like to donate some of my money towards getting this piano. And I said, Shanae McQueen, that's her name. It's fine, baby. I'll find somebody to do it. You've done more than you had to this year. I also wanted to highlight Shariah Freeman Simmons. I must say she is my cousin. She actually works at Chopsticks and raises with me. And I must say, most people, before they knew it, had an angel in their hand. Shariah talked everybody into getting an angel. Some people didn't even know what they're doing, but they got an angel and said, this young lady asked me to get a gift for this child. So I want to thank Shariah. But what's really special about Shariah is Shariah, it was 2 big gifts. One was a laptop and one was an iPad. And Shariah convinced people at her church, at her YPD, to donate for this iPad. And they had put money aside for the iPad, but she went over and beyond, was able to buy the iPad. So we were talking as I was taken to her community service, and she said, yep, we didn't even need to use that money. I said, well, we still need a laptop. And so she said, hold on, made one phone call, and within 15 minutes, we got the laptop and delivered it to the social worker. And then I got an email last night from a lady from Bermuda, Shark Swimming Club. And I didn't realize that the lady reached out to me through an email because she had spoken to Shariah. And Shariah had told her that she was taking her money that she made that week to buy a gift certificate at Choices for a young man. So she took her $100 and got a gift certificate. And the lady was so inspired that she took, I think it was 15 plus angels, and she was able to fulfill that. So it was the work of these 2 young women that made sure that other young people that are their age, maybe in their classes, their peers, they made sure that their Christmas was extra special. So I want to thank them and everybody else that was able to fulfill these angels for our young people. I appreciate it. God bless you all, and have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons. Would any other senator care to speak? Yes, I see Senator Tariq Dunbar Smith. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon to Senate colleagues and the listening audience. I just got a few congratulatory things I want to mention. You know, as a football coach, I'm always in tune with what's happening with the youth in football. So this past weekend, the BSSF had the football finals up at the North Field in National Stadium, and also some games at the Barclay Institute. As with some colleagues within these chambers, Madam President, I am a very proud Barclayite. So I would like to congratulate the under-16 Barclay female team for their 8-0 victory in their final. And a big shout out to Daly Outerbridge, who's one of my players in North Village. Also, the under-16 boys finals, the Barclay Institute beat Salters 4-0. So that puts a smile, of course, on any Barclayite's face, because we just have a tremendous pride as a former Barclay student. Big ups to Sachi Trot, Amirwella, and Ryan De Silva, who are teammates of my son Roman in the under-17 national team. And also, I want to send a special congratulations out to Shelby Deal and Tanaj, 2 players who played for Saltus, who won the over 13 final against Sand Secondary. They're also my players for North Village under 13 Rams. And also a special congratulations to a cousin of mine, David Augustus IV. Although he was on the losing side with Saltus, he was presented with the MVP for Saltus. So congratulations to David also. I have a few obits. I just want to send condolences out to the family of Wezu Spencer. His mother, Brenda, I've known her since I was quite a young boy on South Shore, and his siblings. So I do want to send my condolences to the Spencer Augustus family, also to the Augustus family for the loss of the mother, Miss Pauline Augustus. My deepest condolences to that entire family, and also to the Swan family, Mr. Vincent Swan. He was very helpful to me many times in my laundromat when I needed help with a little bit of plumbing help. And his former Mrs. Swan worked for me for many years, a wonderful employee. So I do send my heartfelt condolences to the Swan family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Terry Dunbar Smith. Would any other senator? Senator Cunningham, opposition leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to add congratulations to my colleague, Senator Simmons, for Ms. Maya Dean, quite an exceptional young lady. For those that may not know, she's also a Barclayite, but did dual enrollment through Bermuda College. She then proceeded to get, and she's mentioned, $165,000 in scholarships for her 4 years at North Carolina A&T, which is from my organization, Ministry of Education, ABIC, and presumably a few others. But to add to the or the echo and add to the comments, it is an amazing resource, and I would suggest anyone with any interest in any student going overseas, or even Bermuda College, the information that she has compiled in that website is unbelievable, and it includes Bermuda, but the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. It has all things from funding to interview skills to, just anything to navigate that transition. So I think a massive congratulations to Maya Dean. Secondly, I want to congratulate Mr. Tony Brannan. He has just walked 1,200 miles this year to fundraise for Dementia Bermuda. He is part of their music program, which obviously supports individuals in a day setting with the clients of Dementia Bermuda. And I just think, that it's an out of the box way of thinking about raising money. He's raised $14,000 so far, and he's hoping to get between 20 and 30. So I think, supporting those probably roughly 3,000 people in Bermuda with dementia, many of whom are uninsured or underinsured, I want to say congratulations to Mr. Brannan. And then finally, as we approach the festive season, we've got all our students coming back. I've had the beginning of my week spent with a lot of our scholars returning and just hearing some of their stories. For some, it was their first time going away, and a lot were homesick. We actually have one down in Barbados at the University of West Indies. And she was talking about the cultural changes, or cultural differences, should I say, between Bermuda and Barbados. But I think, it's important for us to say that we're proud of them, right? So they've gone away, they're getting their education, and we look forward to the contributions they will make in the future when they come home fully graduated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Cunningham. Senator Misha Fabler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to start by associating myself with the congratulations that my colleague Senator Simmons expressed, particularly for the college resource website. I think that's an excellent initiative that will be very helpful to our young people and preparing the hopefully returning workers of our economy. Also, I'd like to extend congratulations to my colleague to herself and both the people she worked with in the Angels program, as well as the people of Bermuda who bought the Angels. I was actually interested in buying the keyboard, and someone beat me to the punch. I was too slow. And so to the people of Bermuda, thank you for your generosity. I'd also like to extend congratulations to the 26 sporting and community clubs who received capital development grants. Early on in my political career, as it were, I caught quite a lot of flack in the public from folks when I expressed my desire for people to become embedded in their communities and gave examples of how to do that, including becoming involved, not just with their money, but their time and talent for community and sporting clubs. And so it's great to see that the gamut of those types of organizations, from cultural community clubs through football and sailing, who were able to receive funding to address gaps in the physical plan and their service delivery to the community. Hopefully we are helping to set the trend, and we see more of that, especially with the recent change in the corporate income tax credit structure. Those of you listening in, or people who report on the session, that is an option for you to help engage with the community. And secondly, I'd like to give congratulations to everyone involved in Bacardi's 50% off ride home program last week, Friday, December 12th. Kind of front of mind in the public space is definitely safety on the roads. And so a corporate partner endeavoring to put forward an initiative to reduce the friction involved with getting an alternative mode of transportation after you've gone out for your evening of celebration. I think that was great. And hopefully we see more of that from our corporate partners. And on that note, Madam President, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Misha Fabler. Minister Crystal Caesar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll start off with the obits and end on a lighter note. I was able to tune in to the going home ceremony for a former coworker who became a friend of mine, Ms. Shanae Smith, and I think Mr. Tariq Smith would probably want to be associated, as I know he has or had a relationship with her as well. It was a wonderful service and very heartening to hear the many lives that she touched with her work and service at the Bermuda Monetary Authority. And as we have heard today, we had quite a bit of input from or legislation as it pertains to that entity. And it was, again, like I said, I met her when I began. I shouldn't say I met her there because we went to the Barclay together, but she was behind me. And as we all know, we don't pay attention to the ones behind us as much because, you know, we're the older ones. But Shanae had always made an impression on me at the Barclay. And so when we worked together at Bermuda Monetary Authority, not only were we colleagues, we were friends. She always greeted me with a positive attitude, a bright smile, and always inquired about me and my children and how we were doing. And so it was good to hear that others had the same experience. So many other lives have been touched by her. And so I wish her family the best at this time, and my condolences. And now to a lighter note, Madam President, I had 3 events that I was supposed to attend at the same time this past Saturday night. So I was trying to figure out which one I'm going to go to. I won't tell you what the other 2 were, but I will tell you the one that I did choose. And I'm glad that I did. It was the Skyport Carol Off that was held down at the airport at LF Wade International Airport on Saturday evening. And I have to say, I'm a music person. I like a little concert. So I'm glad I chose because the young people were so impressive. And I had I was well entertained. But also impressed with the abilities of our young people. They are so talented. And so I want to give congratulations to the schools, the finalists that did participate. There were several schools across the island from primary and middle who did take part. But the first place primary school winners were the Northlands Choir. And as one would know if they've seen them, they have strong voices and they modulate and they harmonize. It's amazing to see how enthused they are. And we have to thank their music teacher, Mr. Terry Henry, who's been noted, I want to say internationally on maybe TikTok, Facebook, something. And it was noted by his performances have been noted internationally by other musicians. So you can only imagine the performance that they gave on Saturday evening. The second place primary school winners were Dalton E. Tucker. And again, they were quite enthusiastic. They were all so neatly dressed with their Christmas hats and their ties and what have you. And they were just rocking on Saturday evening. The middle school senior first place winners were Bermuda Institute. Again, if you know anything about Bermuda Institute and their choirs, I don't know how people chose, to be quite honest, but they were also People's Choice Award winners. And so the middle school and senior second place was the Barclay Institute. And I have to say, and I think others that attended the Barclay would be happy to know that they had an original piece penned by their music teacher, Mr. Maurice Clark. And it was 12 Days of Christmas. And let's just say, one of the lines was, which of course I was just very enthusiastic about, was Respique Fanem was in the place of where 5. I'm not doing it justice. I'm sorry. I'm not doing it justice. No, because as you know, you count down, you go through the first day of Christmas, second, third, fourth, and fifth is usually one that is quite boisterous. And so it was Respique Fenem. And the very first one, obviously, was it's Barkley and not the Berkeley. So of course I was singing very loud as they went through the countdown, and I just thought it was fantastic. So I have a video if anybody wants to see it, so you can understand why I was excited. But anyway, sorry, maybe you can and sharing my enthusiasm, but I was quite excited. I'm glad that I attended. But congratulations to all. And this event, although this is the third year, it's becoming a staple on the Christmas calendar in terms of winter events. And so congratulations to all the schools, the participants, the teachers, and parents. And so thank you, Madam President. I will stop there.
Thank you, Minister Crystal Caesar. Would any other senator care to speak this time? Hearing none.
I will, Madam President. Thank you very much.
Minister Wilkinson.
I think in line with some of the comments, which are congratulatory this morning, Madam President, we've just heard so much about our young people. I had the pleasure of attending the Bermuda Regiment's Christmas choral event on Sunday afternoon. It was due to be outside on the cabinet grounds, but due to the weather, it was moved to the Salvation Army Citadel in North Hamilton. And I have to say, Madam President, that the Bermuda Regiment did a fine job. The event was organized and hosted by the Department of Culture and under the Director of Culture, Ms. Carly Lodge. And I have to congratulate that ministry for the fine work in organizing the event, but certainly to the Bermuda Regiment. And what was so impressive, Madam President, was the insight into the youth music program through the regiment. And there was an opportunity to see the young drummers perform, these, very young men. There were women as well, but in the drum corps, just the young men, they were absolutely fabulous. And I want to go certainly to congratulate them, and to go further, there was a congratulation for long service, and regiment band member James Van Loo was recognized for 49 years of service, right? I've known Mr. Van Loo from high school. He was obviously ahead of me, and he was a musician then, organizing the Barclays band at that time, the school band. So it was absolutely phenomenal to see generations of musicians on display at that event. And it just speaks so much for what giving back and giving time means to our community. So congratulations all around for them. And interestingly, in the intermission from the regiment band, the Northlands Choir under the direction of Mr. Henry also performed, and they were absolutely delightful. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Madam AG and Minister of Justice. I would like to associate myself with the condolences for the Augustus family. And I would just like to also advise the Senate that there was a party we've heard about Mrs. Azula Harvey and her 100th birthday party. Well, the party took place on Sunday evening, and it was a wonderful evening of entertainment, dancing. The Premier was in attendance, as was the Speaker Lister, and the Premier was able to present the letter that she received from King Charles, because when people reach 100, the royalty recognizes you and sends you a letter. And so it was a wonderful evening, and I just want you all and the public to know that it was a wonderful event, and she deserved every moment of it. With that said, we'll move on now to adjournment, and
Sorry, Madam President, we're just trying to figure out when we're going to see you again, officially.
Yes.
Give us a second.
No. We await.
Thank you, Madam
Mr.
President.
Wilkerson, AG, yes.
It is because the House of Assembly will not resume until February 27th, Madam President, with the February 20th, sorry, February 20th with the laying of the budget. And so that there will not be any items tabled that will be in a position for us to debate if we were to return in February. And then the Budget Committee of Supply will start immediately afterwards. So I do believe that we will not be returning until the 25th of March, Madam President. If I am incorrect, we will send notices to our members, but that is what it is looking like. So this House will adjourn until March 25th.
March 25th. Thank you for that, Madam AG. And Senators, I would just like to read a message. May it please, this is a message to the governor. May it please your excellency, the Senate has the honor to present its compliments to your excellency and respectfully extends its greetings for a very happy Christmas and a prosperous new year. And it's sent from us all. Would any senator care to speak on the motion to adjourn? Yes, Senator Lauren Bell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President and honorable senators, as we come to a close of this final sitting of the Senate for the year, it is appropriate that we reflect briefly on the work undertaken by this chamber on behalf of the people of Bermuda. This has been a productive year for the Senate. Throughout the year, we have engaged in constructive debate, careful scrutiny, and thoughtful consideration of legislation and reports that have been brought to the Senate. In total, the Senate has considered and passed approximately 33 bills, legislation aimed at strengthening our economy, modernizing our laws, protecting workers, and supporting both the social and regulatory framework that underpins the daily life of Bermuda. In addition to legislation, the Senate has received and considered numerous reports. These reports enhance transparency, accountability, and inform parliamentary oversight. Madam President, the legislation passed and the reports laid in this year were not abstract exercises. They translate directly into real-world impacts for Bermudians in their workplace, their homes, and their communities. The work of the Progressive Labor Party government in this chamber reflects our continued commitment to governing in the interest of the people of Bermuda, ensuring fairness, opportunity, and resilience across all sectors of our society. Madam President, as we rise for the Christmas recess, I wish to acknowledge the professionalism and dedication of those who support the work of this Parliament, the clerk to the Senate, the parliamentary officers, security personnel, and all staff whose efforts ensure the smooth functioning of our democracy. Madam President, it is also equally important that we recognize and thank all labor across Bermuda, the men and women whose work has built this country and continues to keep Bermuda operating at a standard that is admired and respected across the world. It is the collective effort of these workers, skilled, committed, and resilient, that allows Bermuda to maintain a quality of life and a level of service delivery that stands proudly on the world stage. Madam President, as we adjourn for the year, I wish to extend a warm Christmas greetings and best wishes for the peaceful and prosperous new year to our honorable senators, parliamentary staff, and of course, the people of Bermuda. May this festive period bring rest, renewal, and time with loved ones. I look forward to returning in the new year to continue the work with the same spirit of collaboration, accountability, and service. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Lauren Bowles. Any other senator care to speak? Sorry, Senator Victoria Cunningham, opposition leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I think we can all agree that we're in a season that holds deep meaning for many, whether we're Christian celebrating Christmas or whether we're observing recently the Hanukkah celebrations, Kwanzaa, or other spiritual celebrations and traditions. And while they may differ, I think there's a lot to celebrate between them. So you've got hope, renewal, generosity with giving. And then a responsibility to each other. And I think bringing that into education, which many know I hold dear, I think we have a great responsibility to our next generation with education and opportunity. And I personally think education underpins all facets of Bermuda society. So I think we need to get education right in order to solve many of our other issues. But we need to make sure, are we giving our children the tools that they can thrive? Are we giving our youngsters those opportunities that they can either go away to school or that they can stay right here at home and get training and the education they need? And then are we preparing them for what Bermuda needs today? So, and indeed in the future. So digitally with our digital transformation, but adaptability, problem solving, and all those additional things that you might not necessarily learn from a textbook, but you definitely get through an education system. So I think, while this season is one of celebration, we should also look at kind of renewed resolve in how we work with our youngsters and how we, offer them opportunities. So as we conclude, I would like to echo the sentiments and extend sincere thanks and gratitude actually to all of my colleagues, and then best Christmas wishes to everyone, the legislative staff, support services, and obviously the listening audience, who actually last week I received a letter from you. So thank you very much to Mr. Dale Butler for your comments on Bermuda College, sorry. That was, I think, 45 minutes after the conversation had been held. So it's good to know that you are listening and responding. And I'd then like to take this opportunity to wish Bermuda a very Merry Christmas, peaceful and restorative holiday, and all the best for 26. And I will look forward to coming back for the budget debates in March. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Cunningham. Would any other senator care to speak? Motion to adjourn. Yes. Senator Tariq Dunbar Smith, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just want to speak on just a few things. I'm not one to influence anyone with my political voice. I feel that folks should do their research themselves. With that being said, there's a lot of talk about CARICOM in recent days within another place and in media across Bermuda. I do encourage the listening audience and anyone who is unsure of the benefits or the non-benefits of CARICOM, whatever that may be, to research that. I won't sit here and say it's a good or a bad idea. I would say, my mother would say, because she bought me white Encyclopedia Britannica as a young boy, research it, son. So go out and do your research, because there is a credit to the government, a poll going around, or a telephone interview going around, that people are being called. And many folks are unaware of what CARICOM is. So I just suggest to the listening audience to please go out and do your research, go online. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. I'm sure any of my Senate colleagues, and we will be able to inform you of what it is that CARICOM is. That's just my short little bit on that. Also, I'd like to say thank you to the legislative staff. I've been in these chambers for just a few months, but I want to thank you all for making us look good. You do a lot of work behind the scenes that, many times maybe you don't get the flowers you deserve when the time is right. I want to also say to the Bermudian folk and those around the world that may be listening, I do wish everyone a wonderful holiday season. This is a time for reflection, a time for family. It is very important that we cherish those moments, because at any given moment, that can be taken from us. So please cherish your time and your moment with your family. I will be on vacation from my family because they are traveling. So I am looking forward to 2 weeks by myself with my dog here while my missus and my son travel to her mother in the UK. Sorry, sweetheart. That is just how I feel about that one. But again, season's greetings to everyone within your chambers and the listening audience. And I do look forward to the budget debate. I hear it's quite lengthy and interesting. So I have a lot of homework to do between now and March. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Misha Fabler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And before it gets too late in the afternoon, I wanted to give my piece in what will be our last session of the year 2025. In preparation, I looked back on my notes from the previous year-end session from 2024, which was, I think, only my third or fourth, right? Relatively new. And I gave some similar comments around the need for us to consider that, it's not just the Christmas season, it is the holiday season is definitely a little more appropriate. And so my spiel today is around the reason for the season. My colleague in another place, actually the substantive minister for one of the several hats that I wear, the Ministry of Tourism and Transport, Culture and Sport, recently attended the second annual menorah lighting celebrating Hanukkah. And to quote him, said, "Our island is strengthened by the rich tapestry of cultures, traditions, and faiths that coexist with respect and care for one another." And in that regard, I wanted to spend some time today kind of examining that in the Bermudian context and hopefully provide some information to those of the listeners who may be unaware. And because there are indeed a multitude of holidays or observances within December, and in no particular order of priority, more just alphabetical, because that's kind of my preference generally when listing things. The Buddhists celebrate Bodhi Day on December the 8th. And as I just mentioned, those of the Jewish faith or ethnicity celebrate Hanukkah from the 14th of December through the 22nd of December. And then there's also one of my favorites, Kwanzaa, which is celebrated from December 26th through the 31st. Sikh, those who observe Sikhism celebrate Shahadi Jor Mela on December 24th through the 26th. Apologies to those if I butchered that. I'm a reader. I got a lot of words up here that I have only ever heard in my mind. And so if I said that incorrectly, please do educate me. There's also winter solstice, taking it back a little further through some of the more kind of established religions. They celebrate these winter solstice. That was December 21st. For those of you who suffer from seasonal affective disorder, rejoice in the fact that the days will only get longer from here as we move back into having slightly longer days. And there's also the Zoroastrians who call it Yalda night, also celebrating the solstice. And then finally, the one that is most familiar to all of us, Christmas on the 25th of December. And those of us across the Commonwealth who are lucky enough to also celebrate Boxing Day as a national holiday. I look forward to the back-to-back days off. And kind of taking it back to the kind of title for this, again, what is the reason for the season? I reckon that depends on who you ask, right? If you're those of you who have young people in your life, children specifically, they'd probably say it's the gifts, right? If you did talk to parents, and depending on the number of children they may have and the nature of those children, they may say time off from school, or other, maybe they don't count it in that way. Some people quite enjoy or raise concern when there's a day to give into the teachers for professional development or much needed break. Of course, right? You ask teachers and they say this season is probably most appreciated for the time off from the work they have to do. But I think most importantly, and I think common across all of those faiths and religions and constructed holidays, is that it's important to appreciate time with friends and family, time off from studies, and to some degree time for gifts. Although at that point I wanted to make sure we take some time to try and distance ourselves from that. The idea of consumerism, that the primary focus is gifts and gift giving, I think is detracting from the real purpose of the season, and also contributes to that whole consumerist mindset, which I think is a negative impact on society. kind of helps to keep the capitalism engine going, as it were. And then so in that regard, we should look to focus on the more important parts of this season. And I encourage all of you, my colleagues, and those in the listening audience as well, to ensure that if you're able to, some of us are essential workers, as it were, and may not be able to take time off from work. But if you can, just take some time to disconnect. Ensure you spend some time with people that fill you with joy. And maybe that's family, maybe that's not, maybe that's friends or associates or your dog, as my colleague mentioned previously. Whoever it is, you take some of that time for some introspection. And even if you are experiencing severe distress, right, there's economic inequality, not just here in Bermuda, but around the world. And I would argue it is a factor that is inherent to the capitalist system. And so it may be difficult for some of us to see things that we are thankful for, but I guarantee you, if you take the time to pause and give it some consideration, there will be things that you can find in your life that you are thankful for, even if it is just life itself. I want to take a moment to kind of call out those who are unequivocally experiencing more tenuous existence, living through war and strife, as it were. There are conflicts around the world that I think many of us are aware of. And if you are unaware, I encourage you, as my colleague mentioned, to do your research. There are many, and oftentimes those conflicts are tied to the capitalism and consumerism that I highlighted, right? The quest for gold, oil, and diamonds are things that have negative impacts on society. And as such, take the time to educate yourself on those and maybe change your approach or viewpoint to kind of the need for things. Our family, we try to prioritize experiences over the toys. I think, especially with the younger kids, I think most parents can attest, they are often more engaged with the box that the toy came in than the toy itself. Right? Like, that's definitely been my experience. Sometimes I say I should just get a box and let them have at it, right? Yeah, I think getting back to reason for the season, outside of taking the time to recharge our proverbial batteries, I think we have ample time here in the Senate. We're not coming back until March. I hope that we won't take that entirety of the time. I encourage especially my colleagues across the aisle who may be unfamiliar with the process to develop the relationships needed for us to operate effectively. Reach out to the relevant ministries that you may be the spokesperson for. I find that the public officers are more than willing to meet with you and give explanations on the kind of nature of the business, as it were, and for you to not just you, for all of us to come more informed into the Senate and enhance the level of debate that we have. And also, I encourage those of us who have the ability to do so to volunteer some of your time or talent to maybe some of the community organizations I highlighted during the congratulations, or others, maybe even just a neighbor. But think of ways that you can give of your time and talents to recharge the batteries of others. I think you'll find that working in service is a reward in and of itself that is definitely fulfilling. I think my colleagues can agree. And in closing, Madam President, my last statement, again, from the transport perspective, this is the festive season. There are many events. We had some highlighted. If you are going to drink, please plan ahead, arrive alive. If you are drinking, do not drive. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Misha Fubler. Would any other senator care to speak? Yes. Minister Crystal Caesar, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. In my effort to sort of understand and just reflect on what Christmas means and the holiday season for Bermuda, but also for other countries closely related, I did a bit of research, and in my 50 some years, didn't realize how closely some of our traditions mimic other countries in the Caribbean. And so I just wanted to highlight that in particular, for those who don't know, that there is a strong emphasis, just as there is in Bermuda, in Jamaica, on Christmas songs, traditional caroling, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the food that they in Jamaica eat typically around this time of year is Christmas cake soaked in rum, chicken or ham, and also sorrel. It tends to highlight very much during this time of year. In Trinidad, again, a very strong festive time is had. It's the lead in into the carnival period, and so obviously there's a lot of music, hospitality, singing. Again, there's sorrel, which tends to be indulged during that time, in addition to something called black cake, which I've had to look up because there's actually a movie called Black Cake, so I had to look it up. But clearly there are influences throughout the region on that particular item. And also there are some rum-based drinks. And then in Barbados, they also have the similar meals: baked ham, local fruit cake. There are a lot of caroling. There is midnight church services, which we tend to see here as well in that period. And then in the Bahamas, again, baked ham or turkey, peas and rice, which is interesting that that's the name that came up, because most people say rice and peas in other jurisdiction, but that's what my research uncovered. Also, the centerpiece of that time frame was Boxing Day and New Year, as is here. In Haiti, also they have a lot of carol singing and midnight mass as well, which is again similar to Bermuda. In the Dominican Republic, again, attending church is a very highlights and is featured in their celebrations, as well as family gatherings, similar to Bermuda. One of those places that is most interesting to me is because I do actually know that I have heritage from St. Kitts and Nevis. And so Bermuda very much closely mirrors what St. Kitts and Nevis, how they celebrate Christmas, but particularly on Christmas Eve and Christmas morning, as we do with, gathering and gift giving on that morning. Again, caroling. They indulge in saltfish, black cake, and sorrel as well. But I say all this to say that a lot of our differences are not actually that different. It's just that it's been tweaked depending on the region that you're in, depending on the climate, what's available, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was interesting for me to do this research and really understand and see how much more similar we are than we are different, particularly in the region. But I also just wanted to take the time to also say that whilst it is a time for family and gift giving and singing and whatnot, there are many out there who may or may not have that level of family support. And so I think we need to, and it can be depressing for those who don't necessarily have that kind of connection. And so just take the time to be extra kind, because we do not know what someone is dealing with during this particular period. Studies have actually shown that depression and suicide tends to peak during this time of year, because people don't necessarily have those kinds of supports, and because the weather doesn't necessarily, on this side of the world anyway, support. It's not as sunny, it's not as warm, and as I sit here freezing, sitting in my jacket, but anyway. But I say all that to say that it is a festive time. I think we should enjoy, but I think we also need to be sensitive to those who are around us. I want to also just thank, as the Minister of Education, thank the educators, thank parents, thank the support staff at the Department of Education, the teachers, the principals, and obviously I want to say, a hearty Merry Christmas, best wishes for those who don't celebrate Christmas during the holiday season, to all those in the Bermuda public, and to my colleagues here, wishing you all well during this period. I'll see you in the spring. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Crystal Caesar. Would any other senator? Senator Lindsay Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I first want to say season's greetings to all my colleagues here in another place, and also all the staff that help us all year round to make this happen. But Madam President, I want to take a minute to say, who knows it feels it, right? This would be my first Christmas without my father. Sorry. And Christmas is big for my family. It's a time because we work hard, we work late hours. And this was a time that we always got together. So I say that, sorry, I'm not gonna cry anymore, but thank you. So I just want to say, when your favorite person leaves, it leaves a big void. And my daddy was everybody's favorite. And I take what Minister Caesar says, because I won't say that I'm depressed, but by September, I'm got everybody's gifts. I haven't even started shopping yet. Because the first gift I always got was iPad for me daddy. So I just want to remind everybody that although we're going to celebrate because we have little ones, I now know what it means to lose the greatest person of your life. And I say, just be mindful of so many people hurting, not just me, but a lot of people in our community. I think about my aunt, who last year had to endure losing her daughter and grandchildren. And although I took a minute, I cried and I thought about her, I now know what it feels like to lose a favorite part of you. So I just want to tell everybody, love hard, because life is short. I know somebody else in this room lost somebody, their father as well, and I know that we had a conversation about it, so I know it's hard. I know they're hurting, and so many people are hurting, so I just want to tell everybody, have a great holiday, and if they aren't here, just remember the great times you had with them, and try to be positive. And I understand what my other colleague, Senator Fabler, said, but for me, I share my thanks to my family because I do work hard for everybody stepping in with my daughter, and I try to get the best gifts and outdo everybody else. I'm gonna pull myself forward together and make sure I try my best to get the best gifts again this year. But we pick names, and when it's just buy one gift for one person, but I make the excuse that every other gift I buy is from my daughter. So however you celebrate, I think people know why. What's the why? So have a great holiday season. And sorry for crying, but I do want to say I love you, Daddy, and Merry Christmas to everybody.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons. Would any other senator? Yes, Senator Dion Smith, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, this is indeed the season to be jolly. But I come to this honorable chambers today with a concern that I carefully considered and reflected upon. This matter came to my attention following a call from a constituent regarding an expression used a few weeks ago, an expression that has since caused some discussion and debate within our community. The phrase that raised eyebrows was "over a barrel." It gave me pause, and I felt necessary to explore both its definition and origin. Historically, the phrase was first recorded in 1938 and is said to allude to an old and misguided method of attempting to revive a drowning victim by placing the body head down over a barrel, rolling it back and forth to expel water from the lungs. Over time, however, the phrase evolved to carry a very different meaning, being in a helpless or powerless situation where another party has complete control, often leading to unfair treatment or exploitation. An example of that would be the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, which is often described in terms of unequal power dynamics between involved parties. Similarly, discussions surrounding Venezuela frequently reference economic and political pressures that place the country in a constrained negotiating position. These examples are not offered as judgments, but rather as commonly cited illustrations of how the phrase is understood in a broader usage. This phrase is known as an idiom. An idiom is a common expression whose meaning cannot be understood literally from the individual words used. For example, break the ice means to ease tension or begin a conversation. Under the weather means feeling unwell. Hit the ground running means to begin something quickly and effectively. In closing, Madam President, my intention in raising this matter is not to inflame, accuse, attribute motive, but rather to encourage clarity and thoughtful reflection on the language used within our parliament. Words, particularly idiomatically expressions, can carry meaningful and means that resonate differently across our diverse communities, sometimes beyond what was originally intended. As legislators, our responsibility extends not only to the laws we debate and pass, but also to the language we use, as it helps shape public perception and confidence in the institution. I therefore raise this issue in the spirit of understanding, transparency, and respect, with the hope that our discourse continues to reflect values of fairness, inclusivity, and mutual regard that the people of Bermuda expect and deserve. I would like to conclude by wishing my colleagues in this honorable chamber, the legislative staff, the listening audience, and the people of Bermuda a very Merry Christmas and a happy and prosperous New Year. I look forward to returning in 2026 to continuing serving the people of Bermuda. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dion Smith. Would any other senator care to speak? The motion to adjourn. Minister Wilkinson, were you indicating? Sorry.
If there is no one else to speak, I will speak on motion to adjourn. Thank you, Madam President.
I didn't see any, so certainly, Minister Wilkinson, AG, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. It is the time when we are closing the year, Madam President. I think wishing good cheer to all in our country and those abroad. Madam President, I think it's important to take this opportunity. I just heard my colleague across the aisle talk about words and words said. And I think that's fine in the context of those single words. But the meaning attributed to words often is made fuller by the additional words and the context in which they are used, Madam President. Words alone outside of context, right, in my opinion, not really worth talking about definitions. But be that as it may, what I want to say, Madam President, is that at this time of year, particularly when we talk about extending good cheer, and we recognize the reason that we all take a place in this chamber, Madam President, it is because we are all interested on this side, across the aisle, independents, in another place, in making sure that we operate to make Bermuda the best place possible, right, for the people who live here, and also that we are seen to be the best place in the, as we're looked at in the world. We operate, Madam President, now in a time when words travel instantaneously. They're not contained in another place. They're not contained in the halls. They're not contained just in the Royal Gazette. Whatever is printed, said here is capable of being interpreted, read, defined, perhaps by others, in every other place in the world. Because Bermuda, right, is not just another world, it's not an island on its own. We are part of the fabric of jurisdictions, right? But, and particularly as a domicile, a leading domicile for international business, Madam President, it is important that when we talk about our jurisdiction inside, that we understand that those words may be measured outside. So, Madam President, any conversation amongst members of Parliament, of citizens, but particularly members of Parliament who have a platform, Madam President, where the words that they say will be replicated, recorded, played again, right, and interpreted internationally, care must be taken, Madam President, that we do not inadvertently score own goals against our country in the effort to score political points. It is imperative, Madam President. And that is the care that must be taken. When we say we care for one another, we care for one another because we care for Bermuda. And if we care for Bermuda, we care about how Bermuda is interpreted, how Bermuda is looked at, and how Bermuda is measured on the world stage. And that is the bigger work that we do, understanding that we are always, Madam President, putting our jurisdiction in the best light. And that is not to say people should stand in any place and say things that are not true. But when we make comments that are said with innuendo, Madam President, that presents a burden. And as elected and appointed members in the places that we sit, Madam President, that is a burden that must be carried out with diligence and care and understanding the impact that words and innuendo could have, not just on a member across the aisle that they're leveled against, but across the entire jurisdiction. Those things help to characterize the jurisdiction, Madam President, and that is why we do all of the work that we do to meet the Financial Action Task Force standards, so that the world knows that this Bermuda is not a place where corruption is tolerated. Everything that we do in that regard, Madam President, trying to make sure that the 40 recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force are not only matters of our law, but they are effective in how we operate, Madam President, that we're able to demonstrate by illustration and example that we do the right thing in this jurisdiction. So, Madam President, that is why it should not be tolerated when members use their platform and their voices to make the suggestion that things may be untoward in this jurisdiction. There should be no place for that, Madam President. I was encouraged to hear my colleague across the aisle talk about openness to have dialogue and encouraging Bermuda residents when they may be having questions about CARICOM. It is a platform promise of the Progressive Labor Party president that we will move toward examination of full membership. So that's not anything that people won't know. But what citizens who seem to suddenly be talking about it may not recognize is that we've enjoyed the benefit of associate membership in CARICOM for more than 20 years now, right? I think sometimes, Madam President, residents may not know what those benefits have been for 20 years because we're not often talking about it as a matter of course. And perhaps that is something that should change. So that when people go to, as my granddaughter says, now we don't do research, we search it up, to search up, right? What this means, that they should form, as my colleague across the aisle said, form their own views about what this means, but they should be doing that in the context of what's already been done and what we already benefit from, Madam President. So talking about my colleague, Senator Caesar, talked about the things that unite us more than the things that divide us. We're living in a world, Madam President, again, where we know that we are not an island sitting in the North Atlantic by ourselves. All you have to do is turn on the news to recognize that the opportunity to be more aligned and to deepen our ties with territories that are more like us than different from us is more important now than ever, Madam President. When we have first world countries waging war on weaker territories, that in and of itself should be the kind of thing that says to citizens, what about us? How are we strengthening our position as an island where we are geographically with countries that are more like us? I have the opportunity, I talked about it in this chamber last week, Madam President, about my time in the UK, sharing with other British overseas territories and crown dependencies who are not even in the Caribbean, Madam President, in the Pacific. But we talked about what things we have more in common than the things that divide us. Madam President, this world is a small world because of technology, in the way that news, bad news or good news, moves faster than the speed of light, right? By the time it's spoken, someone is reading it on another part of the world. So, Madam President, we do have to take care. We have to take care with how we guard our jurisdiction. We have to take care with how we treat one another publicly and privately, Madam President. And we have to take care of our country and our people, Madam President. So with that, I didn't want to leave this room without talking about one of my colleagues who she's spoken today very emotionally, but she exemplifies, Madam President, and I am talking about none other than Senator Lindsay Simmons. She exemplifies every day what Christmas is about. There is no one that I have met before or know now who is more giving. I do not understand how she manages to do all of the things that she does in running very busy businesses, giving all of her time to the Foster Parents Association, being a foster parent herself, being an adoptive parent, being the chair of a very busy Bermuda High Schools board at Cedar Bridge. And I am constantly hearing from Senator Lindsay Simmons about the concerns of others. If there is something that she believes I could do to move the dial for a family, she is articulating that. And Madam President, this is how she operates throughout the year. But I believe that the way that she operates, citizen to citizen, family to family, person to person, is the embodiment of really what Christ died for, is that we should be sharing, loving, and helping one another always. So, Madam President, with that, I would like to just bid happy holidays to my colleagues in this chamber, to our support staff, certainly, to Ms. Beal, Mr. Somner, and Mrs. Place, Madam President, and to all of the listening audience. Please be safe, as Senator Misha Fabla has said. If you are traveling on our roads, I live in Somerset, Madam President, and I swear I meet an accident almost every day in my comings and goings. And we want people to be safe and to have a happy and prosperous 2026. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Minister Wilkerson. And Senators, I would just like to say, I'm sure this listening audience haven't heard each one of you speak on the motion to adjourn and all that you had to say. And when they listen to our debates and our sessions, you know, the feedback to me has been really, really good in terms of how we function as a legislative body. And I just want you to know that that's the feedback I get all the time. So I want to thank each and every one of you for your hard work during this Senate period. And particularly, we've embraced 2 new senators, and I want to acknowledge you both and look forward to continued work going forward. I also want to, as each one of you have said, to thank the legislative staff for their work in ensuring that we are able to perform our work effectively. And I really, really mean that, because they really, really go out of their way to make sure that we function effectively. And I really want to thank them as a group and individually. I also want to extend my very best wishes to each one of you. How I'm aware of so many families who are having a difficult time at this time because of the loss of family members. And even in my own extended family, there are losses. And so I feel for all of us here and all those in the community who are spending Christmas without certain family members. You know, we've had so many accidents from our young people, and I think about them, and, you know, and like you all, we're on the road and we have near misses. People are overtaking you, they're going on the side and coming close to you. It's very, very difficult. And we all have to be so aware of our surroundings and take our time also to make sure that we don't cause an accident. And I pray before I leave home, and I pray throughout the time I'm on the road. So I agree with all that has been said about safety on the road, because it is very, very difficult. Our young people need to slow down. But this is the Christmas season. This is the time and families get together and spend time and show love, not just to their immediate families, but to their extended families and to the neighbors. And so I want to wish each and every one of you and the listening public a wonderful, safe, and blessed Christmas, however you spend it. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you in the new year. I'm saying the new year. We've been told we'll be back in March. But I do know that there are some things that will be happening before that date. But I want to wish each and every one of you a blessed Christmas and an enjoyable Christmas. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for your hard work. We're a very successful team, and I look forward to continuing the work in 2026. So with that, Senate stands adjourned, and enjoy and be blessed. Thank you.